Hello and welcome to Netflix vs. Cinema, the podcast that goes to the cinema every week, watches a couple of things, rates them out of 5, stays at home on the sofa, watches a couple of things, rates them out of 5, puts them up against each other, and sees where our money has been better spent this week. Who is winning the fight for our eyeballs? My name is Tosin and I am the host. I am based up in the United Kingdom, somewhere near Birmingham, the second city, called Bromsgrove. And joining me as always on the Isle of Wight, somewhere off the south coast of the country, are Sharon Bolin.
Hello.
And Sean Harris.
Yeah.
Yeah, people who I met all these years ago. Sharon, can you imagine it's been about 10 years?
Yeah, it's all of that, isn't it? I was thinking the other day,
Yeah.
we've had our 10-year friendiversary.
Yes, 10 years.
Wow.
10 years where I met you guys in the Cineworld, cinema on the Isle of Wight at the quiz, at the movie quiz. And then eventually I dragged them into this world of spending an hour every Thursday night talking to me. It was all a ploy for me to have more friends. And joining us from London is our London correspondent, Holly Nesling. How are you, Holly?
Hello. I'm very well, thank you.
Very, very well, very well. We've just spent time talking about our alien bodies because we're all of a certain age. We're all of a sudden you can walk up the stairs wrong and be in bed for a week.
And this year is going to be our 23rd friendiversary.
That is true. 23 years. Well, we met up as what was bright-eyed 20-year-olds, was it? 20-year-olds, first year university.
Yeah.
I was 20.
When we were young. I think I was not. I was doing my second first year, and I think I was 19.
Okay, all right. What you think a second?
I don't remember these things. How do you not remember these things?
Oh, no.
It's important in your life.
No, it's the fact that you had done 2 first years by the time you were 19, and I didn't even get to university until I was 20. But never mind. We're not talking about broken bodies. We're not talking about football, and we're not talking about university. We are talking about films. We're gonna go forward. So first of all, we're gonna go with cinema. What have people seen this week?
Okay, well, both myself and Sharon, we saw 2 movies.
Mm-hmm.
So, which was The Zone of Interest and
American Fiction.
All right.
And I have also seen 2 films and saw The Holdovers and Poor Things, which I know Sean has already seen.
Yes, Sean reviewed last week, and we're going to have some time at the end where we can have a little bit of a feedback on that because I also saw Poor Things. I was planning to see Mean Girls, but the life of the new dad let's put it this way. I was really, really impressed myself. I might to see 1 film in the cinema this week. It's my first film in the cinema in about a month, and I thought once I tried to fly too close to the sun. And I tried to go and see 2 films. I tried to go see Mean Girls. It did not work. So yeah, then we'll have but we can say what we thought about Poor Things right at the end. Holly and I, we have our official review from Sean, but we can also just always feedback. It's always good when we get to see that.
Feedback's always good.
Yeah, it's always good to do that. All right, and at home, what have we seen? Let's start with you, Holly.
I've not actually completed seeing anything this week, I don't think.
You saw Boudica, didn't you, the film?
Oh, yes, I did see Boudica.
Boudica.
Yes, we've both seen Boudica. What else have I watched? I
Okay.
think that's the only thing I can remember, apart from a lot of the things I haven't finished. Like
I think the thing is, you watch so
season
much
1.
on TV that you tend to forget what you've watched.
Yeah.
Unless anything's really, really brilliant.
Well, Silent Witness season 1, I have to say, from 1995. I watched last week. And it stands up to the test of time well. It's going to put that out there.
Is that the original Amanda Barton ones? Or was it Amanda Barton
Amanda
or
Burton?
Burton. Okay. All right, cool. So we have that. Okay, how about you, Sharon? What have you seen at home?
I have just finished seeing Reacher season 2 on Amazon Prime.
I saw that as well. I totally forgot I'd seen it. Reacher season 2 because essentially, as Sean says, there's just so much stuff to watch at home. So I actually now have a note on my phone, and anytime I finish watching something, I put it on there. And if I forget to put it on that list, I've forgotten that I've watched it until somebody else mentions it. So I'm just looking at the list going, what haven't I spoken about on this list? All right, cool. And how about you, Sean? What have you seen at home?
Okay, so I watched a thing on Sky which was called King of the Killers.
Yep.
And I watched an old 2006 movie on Amazon with Robin Williams film called
Man of the Year.
Man of the Year. Yeah.
Yeah,
Which,
because you put that on the chat, and when you said that, I was like, that's a Robin Williams film. Was one of his, I think it was one of his final films.
Yeah, I think it must have been. I think it must have been. But it just intrigued me because I find Robin Williams quite sort of. I find him. I like Robin Williams, so I find him quite, interesting.
I think Robin Williams he's a bit of a genius. I mean,
Yeah.
film wise, I think Robin Williams is a bit of a genius. So, what did you say? It wasn't Killers of the Flower Moon, was it? No, that was
No. Although we'll have to say that. But King of the Killers.
King of the Killers, that was it.
King of the Killers, yeah.
King.
So the trouble is, you forget so much. I've watched the Battle for Algiers, and I watched the Battle of Algiers last night. Funny enough.
Okay, but I feel like with some of our rules, we have some arbitrary rules that we have to try and keep handle these things, and that is that you can't bring something to the show that you have already watched before.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
the Battle of Algiers feels like something that you would have watched before.
I've seen it a couple of times. Yeah,
So it's like with your war movie thing, I'm like, there is no way. It's the same with the other week. I said there's no way in hell that Sean is going to like Night Swim. There's no way in hell that Sean has not already watched Battle of Algiers.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So that's other stuff I've watched, and
Okay, cool.
I also watched a cheesy thing called Blood Rain 2, which was like a vampire western, which was.
I think that's based on a video game.
Is it? Yeah, there was three of them. Blood Rain.
Yeah,
like
Blood Rain. Rain spelled Rayne.
That's
right?
the one. Yeah, there's like
Yeah.
it's like a World War II one, and
Is it Mila Jovovich? Mila Jovovich?
no, I don't know who it is. I couldn't even tell you who, because I mean it was schlocky fun.
Mila Jovovich is the Resident Evil movies.
Evil movie, yeah.
Yeah, I thought
And
she did that
Ultraviolet
as well.
and Monster Hunter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did Monster Hunter. All right, cool. So we have those. I had something that I'd watched online that I also mentioned, but I think we've run out of space to talk about it. Which was Boat Story on BBC Two on BBC iPlayer, which I'll just say I think you like. So without further ado, let us fly into our reviews and let us kick off with American Fiction. Now, two of us have seen this, so I'm going to give this one 10 minutes because obviously there's going to be some back and forth. So I'm going to give us 10 minutes to talk about American Fiction. Sharon, could you give us a little bit of a précis about what is American Fiction about?
Yes, it is about a man played by Jeffrey Wright, who is a writer of literary fiction. It's slightly elevated based on the myths and sort of legend. And he is published, but he isn't living off of his earnings as a writer. He's working as a university, lecturing on literature. And he's had a little bit of a falling out with his university over some of the language he uses that some students have found offensive, namely the use of the N-word. He's a black man. And he says, if I'm not offended by it, then why are you? But obviously the faculty don't agree. So they've said, have a break and, work on your next book, that sort of thing. So he goes home, which is, I believe, like the northwest coast, sort of like looks like Connecticut.
I think it's Boston. It's Boston.
Boston. It's in Boston.
Thank you.
And so he goes back there, and he's his mum is getting elderly and a little bit forgetful, a bit sort of Alzheimer-y. He's got a sister who's been her main caregiver, and he's got a brother who's recently sort of rediscovered his sexuality, and so he's sort of exploring his own inclinations elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So he's then sort of stuck in this rut, and he writes basically not as a black writer. He's a writer who just happens to be black, and he is sort of fighting this battle basically against the establishment, who have this idea that black American writers can only write about the black experience, but only a particular type of black experience. And whilst he's in a bookshop one day, he sees this book by a popular sort of American writer, but it's sort of like taken off by storm. And basically, this is a young woman who's been raised in privilege. She was privately educated, got a job in a publishing house, and then produces this book called something like "Yo, we just live in the hood" or something. And they say, "Could you read us a quote from your book, please?" As a well-educated woman, and she goes, "Yes, I'll read your passage." And she's really well-spoken, and she opens her book and it's like, "Yo, shut up!"
It's like, "Yo, Sharonda, is you pregnant again?"
Yeah.
That's right. You what? You did not. And it's all like that. And he's saying, and then the people love it because it's like it's real, it's like authentic, and it's genuine, and it's none of those things. It's not written from her experience, but it is like what people expect a black writer to write.
Yes.
And so he one day, in like a fit of pique, he decides he's going to write his own book, and it starts off as My Pathology with an F, and then they changes the name later on, but we're not going to go into that in this show. And he writes it like as if he were a gangster. He's done time. He's writing a gangster, and he's writing like his life story. Everything you'd expect, like a deadbeat dad, a criminal brother, gunfights, drugs, baby daddies, that sort of thing. All these tropes, and then he sort of sends his publisher, who's this sort of literary publisher, who goes like, "You are having a laugh, aren't you?" He's going, "No, just send it out, but don't put my name on it. We're going to make up this character." And they send this book out, and basically it takes off like a rocket. Everyone raves about it. He loves it. And basically this book is everything he hates about the literary world. And then the story unfolds about what happens about this book. Shawnee.
So he pretty much writes a parody, and everybody thinks he's being serious.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And when he starts the book, I like the bit. I don't know about you, Sharon. When he's first starting the bit, and the actual characters are saying, "Now, what are we doing?" And actually, I thought that was quite good.
He visualises them, and they sort of play out in front of him.
That's it.
Yeah.
So
And
they
they
visualise,
act-
and then whoever, the actor's saying, would I say
What
that?
do I do next? What am I saying next?
Am I going to do that really? But yeah.
He talks about one of them talks about his complexion. He says,
Yeah,
would I?
that's it.
And he turns to the art writer and says, "Would I say complexion? Would I really say that?
Would I say that? Yeah.
And then he goes, "Actually, no." And then you see him deleting that text, or the actors are waiting there.
Yeah,
He goes, "Oh, yeah, and now I'm going to say, would you look?" And he talks about other things. Yeah.
What I mean,
Very cleverly done.
For me, what I got out of this was, they would say the family are probably fairly middle upper class family, haven't they? They've got like a house in there, a beach house in there.
They've got a country house. They've got like a second home, as we would call
That's
it.
it. But what I really liked that family interaction as well, because it shows. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, I don't know if it was like there was like a juxtaposition of like how we perceive, like they do in the book, how we perceive, the yo Sharonda, all you gangsters.
Yeah.
What are you doing? All the swearing.
Yeah.
But these were a well-to-do family, but they still had the family problems, and I really, really liked that. And that's where that actor that we were talking about, the up for best supporting actor, I thought he was absolutely
Sterling K. Brown.
I thought he was brilliant. He was so believable, especially the scene on the beach, and I think it's in the trailer where. You want to talk to me? It's the bit in the trailer, but I just think he is, and for me, what I got out of it was the family interaction. A family with all their problems, with all their arguments, but they get on, they're good. I really liked that, and I was sort of thinking, well, this shows that there's a lot of families in America, that are doing really well, as well as like, because we do.
You mean black families?
Black families, yeah.
You mean black families, yeah.
But well-off black families that still have problems,
Yeah,
100%,
still
have family problems, like most families do, probably all around the world. So, yeah, I mean, I picked that up from it. I thought that was really, really good. Anyway, but also when he goes, "Oh, we're going to get the film rights," and it's like he goes, "Right, you got to go and meet the director," and he's like. I don't know.
Well, I think that there's a scene in the trailer, because I haven't seen this yet. I haven't seen it because I'm guessing this was a preview screening you guys saw.
It was, yes.
A mystery screening. We didn't know what we were going to see.
Yeah, mystery. Yeah, so it isn't actually out around me until next week Wednesday. But I saw the trailer for this before Christmas last year, and it was one of the funniest things I'd seen all year. Like the trailer alone was probably the funniest film one of the funniest films I saw all year last year, because I think I know the scene you're talking about where he has to go meet a director, and so he has to act like this character who wrote this book that is totally different. Like he has to act like this gangster when he's actually like this I would say upper mid class guy who's been brought up with a certain thing, and
he's a university lecturer. That's like, he is an author of literary fiction. It's like he is not,
He's
the
not
hood.
he's not from the streets. He's not from the hood. He's never had to carry a dime bag of whatever to John, like, to Mookie down the street or anything like that. But that's the only thing people are willing to accept. And the concept of this film, I love. The concept of this film is something I was like, I need to go see this film, and I'm just sort of like, and don't worry, when it comes out, I will go see it and I'll let you guys know what I think, because I think that this I just love the fact, as I told Sean earlier, I reckon there's going to be a lot of things in this film that, as a black guy, I would have thought, yes, that, why that? But also at the same time, not being American and being African, I feel like there's going to be a difference, and I think it's going to be really interesting. What I find is the same, or what I find that I can't connect with.
That's
Part
right.
of me
And
couldn't help but feel that as well, the joke was partly on us as an audience, because I'm thinking we were sat there on the Isle of Wight. I think it was an entirely white audience there watching it, and we were laughing at the jokes like where we're supposed to laugh at the jokes. How sort of he was like highlighting the ridiculousness about how people perceive how he should be and then how he actually is. And part of me thinking, I wouldn't recognise a real voice of Black America if it came up and sort of poked me. So I thought in some ways the joke was on us as the audience as well, a little bit, because I was thinking I probably wouldn't get it, so whatever they sort of sold me, I'd probably go, oh, okay, because I wouldn't be able to discerning enough. And
like, that is how they live in America. That is how every black person in America lives.
But also, I really like the pretentiousness of all the
literary people and
the literary people, and it was a real super parody of them. Or like they're gushing. Oh yes, it's fantastic. And the bit when he says, "Oh, I want to change the name of the book," and they're like, "Let's think about that." And it's just like,
bold, it's amazing.
Yeah. It's brilliant. And they are really, really pretentious. And also
brave. You're so brave.
When they got to do the critics, when they get all the literary critics together, and you've got like the stereotypical one, like you know what I mean, the vegan one and all that.
Okay.
And it's just like it's
all right. Yeah. Everything you're saying is only making me want to watch this film now. What makes me want to watch this film now? I need it here right now. But okay, so. Before anything else you want to say before I ask you how many stars?
I'm just
Jeffrey Wright, excellent. I think he's been around a long time.
He has.
He sort of hovers slightly under the radar, doesn't he? In a lot of things. But no, I think he was absolutely amazing in there.
Yeah, I think the whole cast was. I think it was absolutely, and even like I say, the scene where they're right, and there's an actor. I mean, I should know his name, but he was in with. I can't remember. They Live, the John Carpenter film. They Live.
Keith David.
Keith David, that's him exactly.
Keith David, absolute legend. Keith legend.
David. So Keith David pops up, which is not for long, but yeah. So
it's funny how you said that. You said They Live, and I was like, well, there's only one black man in that film, so it's gotta be Keith David.
It was Keith David, yeah.
Yeah, so yes, it's not. It really makes me want to see it. And the funny thing you say about Jeffrey Wright is, I feel like this film might actually be a little bit personal for him, because I remember the first time I ever saw Jeffrey Wright, he was in the John Singleton remake of Shaft, and he was and that was the first time I ever saw him. And he was acting opposite Christian Bale. That film, for not a good film, it has a stupid cast. So like he was playing against opposite Christian Bale, and he was playing a drug dealer who was getting Christian Bale to sell his drugs at like the higher episode. And so he was like he was essentially playing the kind of stereotypical thing that he would probably have written in this. But ever since then, I've seen him move away from that and be able to get things like Felix Leiter and play like the roles he played in Westworld. And I feel like this might actually be partly his story of what people expected from him when he first started as an actor to where he's managed to get to now. So how many stars?
For me, it's a four star. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a really good movie, yeah. 4 stars.
I'd say again, 4 star. Yeah, absolutely good. 4 star.
4 stars for American Fiction, by the film that I just cannot wait to see. Okay, and
just say something else he'd been in. He was in the Hunger Games as well, which he was superb in.
Who was he in the Hunger Games? Oh yeah, no. Who was he in the Hunger Games?
He was one of the participants in Catching Fire.
Yeah, he was
the
scientist.
Oh yes,
he was a previous champion. When they all went a tribute, he went back because they got all the previous winners to go back in the arena again.
Yeah, and so he was in 3 of the 5 films, and he was superb.
Yeah, no,
He's
Jeffrey Wright.
always superb.
Jeffrey Wright is pretty much he's uniformly excellent in everything he's in.
Yes.
Even in something that goes off the rails like Westworld. So anyway, let's go on to home stuff now, and we're going to talk about Boudica. So Holly, tell us about Boudica.
I begin with
Okay.
sigh.
Okay, if you're going to begin with the slide, I'm going to give you and Sharon 7 minutes to talk about this. That's the case.
So the premise, it is based on the English a sort of old English figure, ancient English figure of Boudica, who was queen of the Iceni and who led a significant revolt against the Romans. She's sort of infamous, notorious for having had spikes on the wheels of her chariot, and is a sort of renowned, very, very strong, strong female leader of quite unusual for most times, really, I think is fair. And the film itself is therefore, as I say, based upon her, and it begins with her being married to a ruler of a tribe who is closely aligned to the Romans and who ends up being killed. And as a result of circumstances, she gets drawn into being the leader of a resistance movement fighting against the Romans. And lo, stuff happens.
And then we have Braveheart. We have female Braveheart. So
we have female Braveheart, except older.
Okay, all right. So, I think Sean, Holly, I will save you from that because I can see the enthusiasm draining out of you as you were given that present.
But Sharon will be able to provide some more profundity, I suspect.
Okay, so let us with that.
I saw that swallow.
That's what happens. That's what happens. Okay, now let's get on to what you guys thought about it, which I'm expecting great things. I think this is going to be amazing.
Wow, it's a tricky one because there's your expectation versus what you actually get.
Yeah.
And when I looked at it and I thought it looked like it was going to be quite a reasonable production, I thought, oh, this should be quite good. And then it really wasn't.
No.
I think part of it is people, when they sort of talk about this sort of early sort of British period, especially sort of Boudica bit where the Romans had like moved in force, they had rebuilt like Colchester, they had like the temples to the gods, and I think it was Claudius, they'd had the huge statue, and Boudica's army basically sort of razed it to the ground. They found the head of this statue in the river, didn't they, quite recently, like a few years ago. And it was a major revolt. She destroyed 2 legions effectively, reduced them to their knees, and you wouldn't get that from this particular Boudica. And because as soon as they mention the word druids, they suddenly seem to go a bit nuts, don't they? They seem to think that all the ancient Britons were what sort of mystics, where they sort of did really odd things.
Yeah.
And part of it's you're thinking, is this based on any research that you've done, or have you just sort of like cobbled a few bits together from sort of folk religions around the world? Because I just look at when they do this sort of the druids, it's just piffle, isn't it?
It's a bit silly.
It makes no sense to me.
Were they painted blue by any chance? They weren't, I suppose. No.
Sean, are you going back to King Arthur?
Yeah, that's what I think.
Everybody's always painted blue.
How did you know that?
They managed to take
amazing.
a fascinating period of history there and reduce it to something that was a little bit silly.
Yeah.
I didn't recognise her as Boudica, to be honest with you. And the whole point of it was that she was a co-ruler with her husband, but the Romans did not recognise women rulers as independent rulers, so that's why she was flogged. Her daughters were, according to history, her daughters were abused, raped, and we don't know what their fate was. And she was flogged publicly and humiliated. In this, her daughters basically, she's arrested and her daughters disappeared. So the outrages committed against the daughters is never referred to. And her flogging was just a little bit, and she was branded, which I don't think there's any record of her ever being branded. But yeah, to me, it's just they took some of the bits of history, knitted them together with their own idea of what they think would be quite fun. And I thought it was just a load of old nonsense, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I think the BBC, going back a few years now, I think the BBC BBC or someone, they did like a 3-part about Boudica.
It was ITV.
When I was doing history, it was Boudica. It was still, you would call it Boudica. It was still, that's what it was. But you get the revisionists. And I think it was the Iceni, wasn't it? Was she with the Iceni?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I think that was ITV, and there was the Alex Kingston one, which you spoke about when you guys mentioned this the last time.
Yeah, ITV.
Again, they did a bit of druidy stuff in there, and again, I think
I can't really remember that.
Prominent in those.
I can't really remember it, but
and the Iceni and all that.
But it sounds like it was a little bit better in that.
Alex Kingston is consistently good as well. So
well, to be honest with you, this is something that when they said they had Olga Kurilenko playing Boudica, that made me wonder what was going on here, because to my experience, I don't think I've ever seen Olga Kurilenko play anything other than what she is, like, Ukrainian, like a Eastern European person with a slightly inflected accent, and I was like, I'm not sure. I have my doubts as to whether she can pull off English, especially English sort of like war hero.
Obviously, we don't know how the Iceni sounded. I mean,
but I'm pretty sure I'll be surprised if they sounded anything like Ukrainians.
Like Ukrainian, yeah, that's true. But no, I think it had promise, and there was the old element was quite nice about it. But on the whole, I didn't really rate it. I thought to me, there was just like too much sort of fantasy knitted in with history, and then they didn't actually present the history very well to make it sound as impressive as it was. Because she did, drive the Romans to their knees. So it's only auxiliary legions that she destroyed, and when she was up against the big boys, then the Britain's fighting techniques obviously didn't hold up against the might of the Roman Empire, but she certainly gave them a run for their money.
Were the battle scenes? What were the battle scenes like, Sharon? Because you know me, I like my battle scenes.
They're poor. There was basically a couple of ambushes in woods. They're like creeping about in woods and then throwing stones and spears at Romans.
Right.
It was just like these people would not defeat legions. And she had thousands flock to her cause from all around that part of the world. Tried to kick the Romans out. It didn't work, but
I think she got as far as London, didn't she? She got as far as London after sacking of Colchester, or I think it was called Camalodunum or something like that. Camalodunum, and then she got nearly all the way to. Anyway, no, that's history thing. We're talking movie,
No.
Yeah, so I feel to me it was a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially when you give like the stories and you're thinking on how there's some of those things that you could have delved into, like what happened to her daughters, especially because of what you find nowadays, where there's a lot more stuff about how women have been treated that is being attacked. It sounds like it's a missed opportunity, but funny enough, I'm drawing a parallel because from everything you said about this, I would be really, really surprised if this was actually a British production or a production that had any British person involved whatsoever. This sounds almost kind of like, how in American fiction you're talking about how there's a certain vision of black people that Hollywood is willing to accept. Yeah. This sounds almost like there's a certain vision of English people and England and old school things that Hollywood is willing to accept, and that's what they've made here, where they feel, They
had a few cast members who had been in Vikings, so I don't know whether they sort of take a little bit of that sort of Vikingness and they want to sort of introduce it to this, because Peter Franzen, who was Harold Finehair in Vikings, he played a sort of Celtic warrior in this, a mercenary who fights with Boudica, and Clive Standen, who plays her husband, he was Rollo in the first couple of seasons of Vikings. So I think that's where they were probably looking for their history rather than to actually history.
Yeah.
And
so how many stars?
It was British, by the by. It was about country of origin, United Kingdom.
Oh no! I'm going to look. There's going to okay. I'm going to go through the boring deep dive to find out what the production company is later. but for now, what's the star rating? Because if that's a British company, that is disgraceful. What is 3? How many stars? Sorry.
2 for me.
Yeah, 2, and it's even a grudging 2.
So it sounds a bit like Netflix content filler, just sort of like content. Like
I was really disappointed. I was hoping for something much more.
Yeah. Did you get these emails saying in 2 days' time it's going to be coming out, and you're going, oh, okay, and then you watch it and you go, oh, goodness sake.
Could have saved myself some time.
You're like, pull the other one.
I could have watched House of the Dragon again for the 8th time.
All right, cool.
House of Dragon, did you say?
House of the
That's the
Dragon.
Dragon. Yeah, I've watched
I
that.
like that. I like
Yeah.
that. When's the second lot gonna come?
Sometime this year.
Ooh.
Yeah, no, they haven't.
Have you?
No
Oh, you
release
haven't
date
seen the
yet.
whole thing yet, then? You haven't seen
Oh,
the
I
whole...
have. I've seen it multiple times.
Oh, yeah, it's great, isn't it? This is
Love
good.
it.
In fact, the second watch, it's as good
Yes.
as
Yes,
good as
there's
things, mate.
the details that link up with Game of Thrones.
Yes, yeah.
I'm sure you know the exact one I'm thinking of.
Yes, I do. Exact one.
And I, on the other hand, cannot be bothered because
Missing out.
it is just a cash grab. I don't care how well it's made. So anyway, so now let's go back to cinemas and we're going to talk about Zone of Interest. Now, this is another film that has been nominated for Oscars, I believe this year. I think we're in that period where all of a sudden we're getting all these great films that have been nominated for Oscars coming up for maybe just a week and then disappearing. But this is, so Shaun and Sharon, you saw this. And let's see, so Shaun and Sharon, between you, who wants to give us a prezi about this?
I don't mind. Yeah, I can.
Okay, cool.
So,
Shaun, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So, because it was quite interesting talking with Sharon. Right. So, Zone of Interest, and from what Sharon says, these are areas outside concentration camps. So
they were designated as zones of interest. That was what they were called by the National Socialists.
Yeah.
They weren't, because they had they had a name for concentration camps, but they had like a special area, and then it was like zone of interest.
Yeah. So this is a story of it takes place in this garden in the house of the commandant of Auschwitz, and it's his family. So it's him, his wife, and his family, and they've got a nice garden and swimming pool and all that, and outside you've got a lot of countryside, you've got everything. They've got a really nice idyllic life, really, haven't they? They've got this close to the
river.
Close to the river.
They've got horses they can ride.
So but it's right outside.
What more could they want?
All right, all the time you've got, through the whole of the film, you've got this constant noise, and you can see, you never actually see inside Auschwitz itself, but you just hear stuff. You hear shots, you hear shouts, so it's always there. It's constantly, dogs barking. It's constantly there. And they just go about their normal business. It's all matter of fact. Like one of the sons has got some teeth. The people will sort through the clothes and choose what if there's anything nice or anything like that. So and the only real prisoners you see are the ones that actually go in the garden and do maintenance and stuff. You never really see anything else.
Trustees or something.
Trustees almost. So. And it's basically it, and it shows them going, the wife, the mother-in-law turns up. That was quite a poignant bit, I think, at the end, because I thought, because at the start she accepts things, and then anyway, but it's like two movies really. I reckon if you were to close your eyes and just listen to the sounds. And there's a couple of moments, isn't there, where it just goes like red screen, black screen, for like a minute.
It's when the film starts. I would say the first, for me, it felt like 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, probably 2 or 3 minutes.
It was literally just a wall of sound.
Yes.
And then the screen was blank or just like grey, just grey, ash, I suppose, the colour of.
I never thought of that.
You had a wall of sound, and then slowly you could discern different tones in there. And you had like bird song, and then sometimes you'd hear. And like a mechanical noise would start up and stop, but there was like a wall of sound and nothing visual for at least 3 minutes at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then this sound retreated, but it was there throughout the entire film.
Yes.
And so you'd hear trains arriving.
And
that reminds me of what they did with Oppenheimer with some of the sound.
Yes, that was that constant noise, that countdown or that building up of tension. And like you'd hear trains come and go, but you'd never see a train. You'd sometimes see steam in the sky. And the family who were living their lives as if nothing was going on next door. Nothing at all.
It was just sort of a part accepted, matter of fact.
But then you see them having a meeting in their dining room where they were discussing how to build a better crematoria. And how they were talking about how the salesman was saying how you could get a better load. They're talking about loads, weren't they? You could get a load in. You can have one load, and then you can have that one being processed. And then you can cool that one down, and then you can start up the next one. And so they were talking about it as if it was like a bakery, basically.
It was, it was salesmen. They were salesmen, weren't they? IG Farber. They were saying,
crematoria.
This is, what about this? What do you think of that?
And people were trying on coats, and they were thinking, oh, look, is there anything sewn into the lining of this coat?
Yeah.
And things like that. So it was, but it was never mentioned.
No.
What was going on next door, but you knew exactly what was going on.
This is one of the few films that intrigued me so much. The what I thought were animated bits. They weren't animated at all. They were actually shot
No.
on a night scope. I actually had a look because I was so intrigued to what it was all about, and I
Yeah,
hunted
suddenly
and
it
I
went in
hunted.
negative. You had a whole two scenes
Yeah.
where the entire thing was in negative. So you just see like a white figure moving
Yeah.
around on a black background and
So I
putting
had
some objects on the ground. And it was a little girl
Yeah.
planting apples, apparently.
apples.
For
Yeah,
she was just planting
For-
them along.
yeah,
And it was, but the father was reading a fairy story to his children at the same
Yeah.
time. So you're not quite sure whether they were visualizing this fairy story because it's about Hansel and Gretel, wasn't it? But then it wasn't. It didn't fit. So you're left thinking. You just don't know what. Sometimes you just did not know what was going on.
I
And then
had to-
halfway through, it suddenly turned, and it was modern day Auschwitz, and it was the cleaners preparing for the visitors. They were like polishing down the machines. They were
the
polishing
glasses. Yeah,
They
all
were-
all the
They were like
displays.
hoovering out the visitor rooms,
Because he
and then
sort
it
of
swaps back to the 1940s
Yeah.
again. So you suddenly have this moment where you're thinking, "What's going on?"
yeah,
And then
yeah.
again, as Sean alluded to, you suddenly had two moments in the film where the screen went red, just red. You didn't see anything for a minute, just a red screen. And then you had like a black screen
Is it okay?
and nothing.
I've just looked
And
up. So I'm just going to
Yeah,
say, I
go
just
on.
looked up this film, and it's directed. And once I see the director, all of this stuff is making
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Because it's
For
directed
sure,
by
yeah,
Jonathan Glazer, and he
Glazer.
is he is a visualist. Like he likes doing weird stuff. He comes from a music video background. And I think he did a lot of weird music videos in the 90s, like Jamiroquai, Virtual Insanity. He did the Radiohead one where somebody gets hit by a car. He does weird stuff, and once
Yeah.
now all of a sudden I'm like, yes, he wants to make you think.
Yeah. Well, I found out because I had to hunt, and I really hunted because I wanted to find out about those. And they were actually shot with. So it's actually shot, but it was shot with the old infrared cameras, nighttime
Yeah,
scenes.
those
yeah.
night scenes.
Nothing, absolutely. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it was absolutely nothing to do with what was going on in the house. Nothing to do. Wasn't a fairy story. Wasn't anything else. It was just put in there because the director. I had to go and I couldn't find it, so I had to go see the Guardian what the director said about it. And it was actually a case of. He actually met this lady that was a girl was 12 years old, and she did exactly that. She used to go and
Hide
loot
apples and
yeah,
things.
hide apples for when the like work lager parties come out and all that. But it was shot on a night, like infrared, I guess. So,
Yeah.
but I thought it was animated.
But
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
so, but
it just it was hard. When you're watching it, you don't quite know what you're making of it. To be honest with you,
No.
yeah,
and it sort of it washes over you. The sound sets you on your edge, so you're not comfortable, and sometimes at night the sky would be lit up with like this orange glow, of just the crematoria burning away night and day, and so you had these scenes that you just feel so deeply uncomfortable, but you don't really quite know what to make of what you're watching, really.
yeah. Well, the thing is, you guys, what you're saying, you're giving me real sort of like boy in the striped pajamas vibes, and
I didn't. Wow.
Yeah.
and it's and that film destroyed me. So it's but I think essentially it's a Jonathan Glazer film. It's gonna be weird, and how many stars would you give it?
Oh, this is at least a 4. At least a 4. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was an absolutely brilliant film. I'm so pleased I went to cinema. I totally enjoyed this. So I'm giving it 4 star.
I would probably agree that I'd give it a 4. To me, it was like a difficult work of literature that you have to put the effort in.
Yeah.
There's some books you can pick up and you can just read, and then you let them wash over you and it's fine. There's other books that are slightly more challenging that you've got to put the work in. And I think this is a film that probably, if you started unpacking it, there's a lot in there for you to unpack and to think
There's
about.
loads. There's
And
loads.
so I think of it as like a work of literature that it isn't necessarily going to be an easy read, but you've really just got to unpick it. So I will give a 4, but to tell people that, don't approach it like you're watching Schindler's List, because
No.
you're not watching Schindler's
You're
List.
not watching it.
You have to approach it like it's almost like experimental stream of consciousness at work of literature.
In other
Loads
words,
fresh and new.
in other words, you have to approach it like a Jonathan Glazer film.
Yeah, Jonathan Glazer. I mean, hey,
Yeah.
what do you expect?
I'm sorry
Jonathan
because I know that he's not like a household name. He's not like a Steven Spielberg or anything like that. But for people who know stuff, essentially, the second you say Jonathan Glazer, I'm like, okay, cool. He is not interested in making things easy for me. He's not interested. He wanted to go away and he wanted to think. He wanted to essentially do what Shaun has done and go and say, "Go, what the hell was going on?"
Yeah.
So 4 stars but it sounds like he has done well with that, and even the Academy is saying, "Yeah, give this." He's been nominated for Best Director. He's been nominated for Best Picture. So, but it does. But with it being a Jonathan, I think it could be a love or hate thing. Some people would like it, some people would hate it.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, I just think it's really, really new. I think it's just a really, really bold thing to do, and it's something like, and that's what you want. It's not your freshy, blockbustery, smash 'em uppy.
I must admit, it did make me go and look up The Family.
I bet, yeah.
I looked up all about the real people in the film. I looked up who they were and what happened to them, because the implication in the film was that people could not have lived next door and not been aware of what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
And they wrote a book about the wife of this guy, and it was called like The Oblivious Nazi Housewife, something like that, where she claimed for the rest of her life that she had no idea what was going on next door. And so it made me look at it and go, okay. If that was your assertion, that's your assertion, but how believable was that?
Yeah, but then
when you look at a film like this,
Yeah, but then again, I mean, what else are you supposed to say? But it's kind of it's And anyway,
you probably tell yourself that you didn't know.
Exactly.
What would make the Oscars for me would for that to win Best Picture and the actor that we spoke about, the supporting actor.
Oh no, Sterling K. Brown.
Yeah, to win, because I thought him as Cliff, he played as Cliff. I thought he was absolutely so believable as that sort of character, decided.
All right, so that's exactly not what's going to happen. So, that's exactly that's not what's going to happen. So,
4-star film, 5-star subject.
Yeah.
Probably you need your A-level film studies.
Go with your notebook. Go with your notebook and your glasses, so you feel extra smart while you watch it. So, yes.
Really interesting. I've honored you on about film studies. It's really, really interesting once you get into certain films, even films you don't like. But anyway, I digress. Let's move on. Let's move on. We'll have that discussion for another day.
Yes. Shaun, I've got a podcast that I think you would love. It's called All the Right Movies. I've been listening.
Right.
Yeah, all the right movies, and essentially, it's that kind of stuff. It delves into. Anyway, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it later. But now we go over to Netflix and Friends, and we talk about Reacher season 2, which is on Amazon Prime. Now, I'll give a little bit of, because I've seen this, and Sharon, you've seen this. Yeah, so
I've actually seen 1 or 2 episodes. So because when I was in, my uncle he loves it. So, but I haven't seen the whole series, but I've just caught 1 or 2. We're talking about the big beefy one, yeah.
Yes, exactly, the big beefy one, Jack Reacher. So Jack Reacher is based on a series of books. Reacher is based on a series of books featuring the character Jack Reacher by an author called Lee Child, and I feel like you can't talk about Reacher without talking about the fact that this has been made into a film called Jack Reacher, or 2 films called Jack Reacher starring Tom Cruise. And I think every single Jack Reacher fan, I've never read any of the books, so I don't feel as strongly as this as most of the Jack Reacher's fans do. They will yell to high heavens about what atrocities those films are, because Jack Reacher is written as a 6'5" tall behemoth of a man, as Shaun just said, a big beefy person who sort of like blocks out the sun when he walks into a room, kind of thing. And
big old unit.
Yeah, he's a big old unit, and that is not Tom Cruise. So for Reacher fans who have been reading this guy in 20-something books, to have Tom Cruise, they were like, what the hell? So Amazon and Lee Child eventually said, yeah, that was a mistake, and they said, we're going to do a TV show, and where they're going to take a novel, and they're going to adapt the novel over 8 episodes. And they spent ages trying to find the right actor, and they landed on Alan Ritchson. Alan Ritchson, who is, I think some people have said they essentially found Jack Reacher, because he is big, he is huge, he is a unit. And the whole idea is that Jack Reacher has this kind of, I can't remember what TV show it was about, the guys who just sort of the lone guy who just, like almost a hobo, goes from town to town and just wanders the land, doesn't own anything. There's a recurring gag about how he owns a toothbrush, and that's the only thing he owns. He owns a toothbrush, but then each one of these things talks about a case that he finds as he goes around the country. This one is a little bit more personal, because the show starts off and you see a helicopter flying over what looks like, like a forest, like maybe in the Catskill Mountains or something like that. And then this guy gets beaten up. He's attached to a gurney, and they say, you got any last words before you die? And he just sort of says something like, oh, it's like, you're going to love it when the big guy finds you. And then they throw him out of the plane. And they throw him out of the helicopter. So it turns out that guy was part of Jack Reacher's old unit. And some other people people on his old unit have been getting killed. And so some other people who are in his unit get in touch with him, bring him back in, and then these guys who are called the special investigators, the ones that are left, are trying to go through this whole thing to figure out what is going on, why are they getting killed off, who is doing it, and if possible, can they get revenge? And that is the storyline of it, and then it goes on from there. Now, I'm not sure, Sharon, I know you're an avid reader. Have you ever read a Jack Reacher book?
Yes, I've read I like to read all my series in order. I was given one that was like book 15, and I was like, oh no. So I started at book 1, and I've read the first 4.
All right, yeah.
There are about 25 of them. So yes, I have read the first few books.
Okay, so you will probably have more of like a thing of saying, okay, how close to the book it is and everything like that. Yeah. So I'll let you talk about that, and I'll just talk about what I thought as someone who's never read the books.
No, I think he is as good a Jack Reacher as I could imagine anyone to be, because he has got that whole independent, that hobo attitude that, you know, he doesn't want a house. It's not because he can't afford it. Mm-hmm. It's not because he can't. He's antisocial. He's got friends. He's got connections. He does interact with people. He just is fiddle-footed. He was raised in the army. He is only him and his brother, and his parents were army family. He moved from place to place to place. He never had a settled childhood. Then he joined the army himself. He never had a settled adolescence and sort of young manhood. And so now the fact that he's finally out of the army and he's free to do what he wants, he's just happy to drift. So if he drift, he does. But he has got ways of connecting with people. He gets sent money he gets his pension. So he has a bank account, and he has a code that people can send him. And if he gets his code, he knows to get in touch. Yeah. So he isn't completely cut off and isolated, but he just likes to do his own thing. And so, yeah, he drifts, and then he works. Sometimes he'll work for a couple of months. Sometimes he'll work for a couple of days. Sometimes he'll think, you know what, I want to listen to a band in New Orleans. So he'll just go to New Orleans. Or he thinks, actually, I want to go see the snow. So he'll either walk, get the buses, or he'll just cross country and think, I'm going to go to Montana. Yeah. He just crisscrosses the country. And he sometimes encounters adventures along the way.
So what did you think? So have you read, because this is based on a book called Bad Luck and Trouble, which is kind of like weird, because I think from what I understand, a lot of the books about him being a lone wolf, and this is him being put together back with his old team. And so what did you think?
I haven't read this one. Okay, I haven't read this one. That's a bit further up the pecking order, because I am literally starting from the very beginning.
Yeah. But what did you think about this as an adaptation of the Reacher that you read in the books?
I think it's done well. Yeah, you do get that idea. The only part of me sort of gets a little bit cross with Reacher, because I don't know if it's just the way they were written in the 90s, but in every book he has like a different girlfriend. He's a bit like Bond. Yes. He has like a different love interest in every book. And I get the feeling he's probably they're going to do that in the series. He's going to have a different love interest in the series. But so he does like hook up with people. I'm thinking, you're just a man slut. But maybe he's not as bad as that.
Sharon, I don't know, man. That's like, whoa, that's a shocker. Excellent. Good for you, girl. Good for you.
But that's just the impression you get from the first few books. Maybe he isn't quite so extreme in all the others, or maybe it's just a sign of the times. They were written in the 90s, some of these books.
Yes.
But I think what we see on the screen is as close to, as I've seen, anything I think would be close to Reacher as I have seen.
Yeah, and
so I think they've got his spirit, they've got his humour, they've got his just sort of devil may care attitude. He's there's one voice that one of his colleagues in this film was saying, you should play video games, you'll like them. And he's like, why? He goes, I think you'd be really good as a first person shooter. He goes, I am a first person shooter. And that sort of just sums him up. He doesn't live vicariously, he just lives. And I think it is. We do. Yeah, I think what we see is as close to Jack Reacher as I could imagine.
Yeah, I think because from everything I've never read the books, but from everything I've read about them, they're essentially pulpy fillers that you can. Essentially, people talk about like you talk about reading 4 of them and just racing through them. Like they're sort of page turners. They're fun. They're not supposed to be serious. They're not going to make you think about the nature of life or anything like that. Jonathan Glazer's never going to direct a Jack Reacher book.
You can sit back and you can probably read the whole book in 2 or 3 days, even if it's like 400 or 500 pages. You can just race through it. They're very readable.
So they're kind of like thrillers. They're almost like throwaway thrillers, and I think that they've done. Like, you get that with the TV show. You're watching the TV show and you're going, "That's good. That's great. 8 episodes. Get through it, and then cool. Where's the next one? Throw it over your shoulder. Where's the next one?" And I think that they've done really well with that, because it is almost kind of like, it's like the sort of action movie you used to get in the 80s. Like, when you would get almost like a Lethal Weapon or something like that, with the sort of banter and the repartee or something like that. It's kind of like that, but over 8 episodes. But it's like the good ones. And I actually quite like this. And I know the people who've been going, I didn't like as much as the first season. Personally, I don't see how it's any different from the first season. I mean, as in tone or in quality or anything like that. And I like the first season, like the second season. And I think that there are a couple of things. Obviously, there's Alan Richardson, but I really, really like Maria Sten as Neely. And the relationship between Reacher and Neely, I actually really, really love. It's almost like a brother sister, sort of sometimes it's like a paternal thing. It's like, but I really like the relationship between the two of them. And this has Robert Patrick in it. Robert Patrick, who is best known as who?
Terminator.
The T-1000 in Terminator 2. And there is a Sarah Connor line that they have in the first episode of this show that I loved. I thought it was hilarious the way it goes. Because it was done so knowingly, because they have this Sarah Connor line, and you're like, it's Robert everybody knows that's Robert Patrick, but some people are going to be like, I know that guy's face from Terminator 2, and they sound Sarah, and it has a sense of humor about it that I actually quite liked. Some minor quibbles in that I thought that Alan Richardson was actually too big. I thought he was a little too big in this season compared to last season. I think he's beefed up a bit. Yeah, he's beefed up a bit, and he didn't need to. His upper body doesn't look like it can move that well. I think it's a bit too big in this season. But apart from that, I think it was good, and I would give it a 4 out of 5.
Yeah, that'd probably be my only quibble as well, because I think he's quite lean, because at times he works as a labourer, and at times he works as he just walks everywhere. So he can be quite lean but big with it. So yeah, I think he was a bit bulky. But no, I liked it.
Did you? Yeah. Sorry. No, go on, Sharon.
So how many stars, Sharon?
I'd give it a 4-star. I enjoyed it. I watched it, enjoyed it. As you say, a bit of popcorn, feast for the eyes, and at times. But yeah, it was all fun and games.
Yep. Yeah, cool. Sorry, Shaun, you look like you've been trying to say something.
No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. No, as I say, I watched 1 or 2 while I was over, because my uncle was really into it, and I didn't really see any different from like NCIS or any of those other things. You know what I mean? It was just wasn't for me. But then I don't watch those because I think they're pretty standard things. But to be honest, it's a procedural. It's a procedural. There's a lot more. There's a lot more blood. There's a lot more blood than you would get in like an NCIS. It's not a network TV kind of thing. There's a lot more violence and all that. But to be honest with you, it isn't anything that's going to break the bank. As Sharon said, it's popcorn. It's like more. It's almost like in a nice tasty morsel. You eat it, throw it away. Where's the next one? It's like
so it's good for what it is. It is. It's just it delivers. It knows what it is, and it does that well.
Yeah.
It's not pretending to be anything other than it is. So, which is, a lot of
that's what I mean. Because they are really popular. All those sort of series, they're really, really popular. When I used to live in Godric, all the time it was like, oh yeah, we watch, and for me, I mean, it's like Ray Donovan, and all those sort of things. They're all.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not really into those type of series, perhaps.
Okay.
I watch it because I like the books.
Yeah, no, I can understand. Yeah,
I watch it because I can't be bothered to read the books at the moment, and I want to see what the fuss is about, and and all that. All right, cool. Now let's go over, because we are running over a bit. Sure, Holly, you went to see the Holdovers. Tell us about the Holdovers, which is another one of those films that everybody's going Oscar.
So The Holdovers is set in a prep school in the US, where there is a history teacher played by Paul Giamatti, who is cranky, unloved by his pupils, really very difficult. And he finds himself staying over at Christmas with any pupils who are left behind and who can't join their families for whatever reason. And there are initially a group of them, but due to circumstances, it whittles down to one single pupil who found himself there at the very last minute, unexpectedly, who is also not terribly easy. He's a prickly sort of character. So there are the two of them left in the school, along with the cook, who is played by Davine Joy Randolph, who is superb in it. The only thing I remember seeing her in prior to this is actually
Only Murders in the Building.
no, I remember her. I think of her from Rings of Power,
All right.
as she plays somebody's wife, and I can't remember the name of the character, but she's excellent.
Okay.
So the overall premise is that, and I should add, there is another teacher who's generally, is around in the vicinity as well, played by Carrie Preston, who is as superbly Carrie Preston as you would expect.
She's nice. She's good.
And the overall premise is these two people, and ultimately three people, with Davine Randall's character, are building a connection, and she has just lost her son in the Vietnam War. So you have these people in different places of life trauma, life trouble, and they're finding their way through it when they don't have personal connections, and they build them up through this Christmas holiday season. Learning about each other, learning about actual learning, as Paul Giamatti's character starts it all off as everything is going to be run as though it's a term. So we will be getting up at this time, and you will be doing studying at this time, and you are going to be doing exercise at this time, even though the gym is closed.
Yeah.
You will be out in the snow. It's good for your character. And it's the barriers slowly unpick, and you start to understand the things that make everybody who they are, why they are. He had been a pupil there in the past as well, so unpicking why somewhere he clearly doesn't really like, he is at, he's working at, and it's a beautiful film. It's very simple. It's not a fancy film, but it's quite elegant, and it's an incredibly kind film. And I know it sounds like an odd word, but it has a sort of a gentleness, a lot of sadness to it. I mean, it made me cry, but we know I cry at everything, so that's not necessarily that much of an achievement. But it was really poignant. It was also something of a vignette, really, but it was a delight to watch. I left the cinema at the end smiling and feeling very glad that I'd spent the time watching it, and that actually I kind of felt that my life was a bit better for having seen it, and I can't explain why, but it brought me real happiness.
All right. Okay, cool.
Oh, that's nice when a film does that, when a film does actually stir your emotions.
Definitely Oscar worthy. There's no two ways about that.
Yeah. Best actor, best supporting actress, best picture. I think the director. So okay, not to sound all film buffy about it or anything like that. No director, but not to sound all film buffy about it or anything like that. But it's this is directed by Alexander Payne, and everything you said sounds like an Alexander Payne film.
It is. It is an absolutely perfect Alexander Payne film. It does what it says on the tin.
Because he did About Schmidt. He did About Schmidt. He did Sideways. He did what's the other one? The one with George Clooney, The Descendants, the one in Hawaii, the George Clooney one in Hawaii, and it's
that made me cry.
Oh yeah, and he and the thing is, like, on his films, they tend to be like essentially not much happens, so to say. Plot-wise, not much happens. And it could be accused of just being a whole bunch of people watching them hang out and watching them do... and it's all about the internal struggles that people are having and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes he spins gold from it. Like, some of his films, like, for instance, Sideways, I don't think it was as good as everybody made out that it was. But I think The Descendants and... what was the other one? There's another one that he did that I actually thought was quite good, but I think The Descendants was. I think, as you said, that packs an emotional punch. So and Sean, I'm not sure if you've seen the trailers for this, but this film is shot that it looks like it's a lost film from the 70s.
Yeah, I've seen. Yeah, is this Paul Giamatti?
Yeah, Paul Giamatti.
Yeah, I see. Now you're gonna pillory me for this, but I find him very much. I find him very much
Oh no!
in the films. He played.
Add him to the list.
King John. No, he is good in some things. I did like him in.
King John.
He was King John. He played King John pretty awfully.
In what film was that?
A couple of other things. That was in the Templars, Knights Templar or Templar film. I forget what it was called. It was but it was a
James Purfoy as
James
the Knights
Purfoy
Templar.
I think it was called Knights Templar.
Oh yeah, but that was a terrible film anyway.
Yeah, but no, but I tell a lie. He was good. He was in some. Was he in like?
He was in Rock of Ages as
Rock of Ages, and also the Truman Show. Was he in the Truman Show? Was he one of the?
He has a small role in the Truman Show. He's like one of those people that when you watch the Truman Show again, you go back and go, hang on. Is that Paul Giamatti?
Yeah.
It's like everyone want to talk about random appearances of Paul Giamatti before he was famous.
Yeah.
If you see My Best Friend's Wedding, he plays like a bellhop in the he has one scene with Julia Roberts in the corridor of a hotel. Trust me, it's a blink and you miss. He's on screen for about a minute, if that.
So I'm hot and cold with him. I'm hot and cold with him.
Saving Mr. Banks as well.
I don't remember him in that.
No, I don't remember him in that. Maybe perhaps he was.
I think
But
he's
yeah,
the chauffeur who picks up Emma Thompson's.
Oh right. Oh yeah, he probably is. So I like him in small roles, but when he takes centre stage, I'm not quite as enamoured. So,
You're like,
anyway, that's me.
Get onto the shelf. Get onto the shelf with Stanley Tucci and Jason Clarke and all you.
San Andreas.
Yeah,
he's in San Andreas.
Yeah, with Dwayne Johnson.
He's also in Jungle Cruise.
Oh, right.
Yes, he is with Dwayne Johnson.
Dwayne Johnson.
But he's got a very varied CV then.
Oh no! Yeah. I think Paul Giamatti has a very various CV. He has like the dumbest things on there, and he has like some of the highest brow things on there. Yeah. I think he just likes acting, quite frankly. So yeah, okay. But anyway, I think the way this film looks, Sean, it looks like it's right in your sweet spot because it looks like a film from the 70s. Even the font that they use.
Yeah, I have seen the trailer, and I do like. I will see. This is one I see. Is it on? So it's on streaming now, is it?
No,
it's cinemas.
Cinema. Right, I was going to say. All right, cinema.
So, Holly, how many stars?
5.
5. Ooh, okay.
Wow.
5
Not
stars.
a shadow of a doubt. Left we just looked at each other like, yeah, that's 5 stars. It's
okay,
amazing.
all right, okay, and now we go back to Netflix and Friends with Sean. And even going from some of the holdovers, because obviously at the moment cinema is bringing out the big guns because the Oscars are just around the corners. So cinema is bringing out the big guns, and now we go from that to something that I don't think is going to trouble the 5-star thing. Not with the title like King of the Killers, starring, and as much as we love him, as much as we absolutely love, isn't that right, Sharon? Starring Frank Grillo.
I love Frank Grillo.
As much as we love Frank Grillo, he is not. He is like. I remember there was a time we were reviewing a Frank Grillo film where we said, "Is there any such thing as a Frank Grillo 5-star movie?" And we said there is one. There is one, and it's not really a Frank Grillo movie. It's one 5-star movie that Frank Grillo happens to be in.
Yeah,
and that is Warrior.
Isn't it?
That's Warrior. Yeah,
Warrior.
And so, Sean, tell us about King of the Killers.
King of the Killers. Okay, so basically the film starts off. He's an assassin. You see that chap. These are the killers. So
for those of us just listening to the audio, like Sean has if you see this on our YouTube channel, Sean has a background that has a still from the film. This is a film, right?
This is a film. Yeah, this is a film.
Yeah.
So the guy with his arm folded, basically, he doesn't know. He's got a family. He's got a wife, and he's got a daughter, and he's a hitman, but they don't know. So he's on this job one day, and his wife just happens to be out with friends and says, "Oh, what's he doing there?" And something rather nasty happens, so he decides to give up. And then he gets this letter. His daughter becomes ill. Normal trope. His daughter becomes ill. It's going to be very, very expensive. So he's got to make some money. And he gets this invite to go to this building, and they've got the top 6 assassins in the world. So these are supposed to be the top 6 assassins in the world. And then you've got Frank Grillo. He says, "I've brought you all here because you've got to kill me. So because I'm the best. So you have to, if you kill me, you're going to get a million amounts of dollars. You'll get loads of stuff. So, but you've got to kill me.
You get plot device. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. So that's basically the plot, and then it goes to the different ones. You've got different characters that go, "Oh, I don't want to work as a team," and then you've got others saying, "Oh, I want to work as a team," and then you got like the female femme fatales and all that, and they all decide to go and turns or tries to be very John Wicky, with lots of these.
Judging by your picture, it has the obligatory sort of like solitary female or the token female.
The token female, that sort of, they got the token female there, and they're all sort of different weapons. So you got like a Russian dude and you got the American dude that's good with and basically, so it's just these guys going through the house trying to, and there's obviously traps and obviously a lot of Frank Grillo's got a lot of advantages because
he's Frank Grillo.
Is what it is, but because he's Frank Grillo, and he owns it's in the mansion, so he can make noises or gas or whatever, and so if someone's getting the upper hand, he's got ways of stopping them getting the upper hand.
Yeah,
but you can imagine
Home Alone on them.
But you can imagine what the end's going to be. So so I would think
Does he die?
No, he doesn't. But there is. But
spoiler.
And if
Spoiler.
it feels like that isn't even a spoiler. It feels like
it's not even a spoiler. Seriously, this is. I practically summed up the movie. This is absolutely ants, basically. It's like
total twaddle.
Total twaddle. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. You guys are the best killers in the world. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you are the best killers in the world. I'm sure there must be better assassins than you guys. But so basically all you've got is that's the premise of the film. Like, he needs money, so he goes to this mansion. And there's a few altercations between the assassins, shall we say, here, there, a bit of, a lot of action, and then and I think it's wearing me out, to be honest with you, this sort of John Wicky shooting thing. I'm really
sorry. I'm telling you, even John Wick has worn me out. The thing is, like, John Wick Chapter 4 has shown up on Amazon Prime, and I've had it on my watch list for probably about 3 weeks, and I cannot bring myself to watch it. I don't care how many good things people say about it. I'm just tired of it.
I think it's like
Continental, isn't it? Isn't there a television?
There's a television series of Continental. Not bothered.
I think these type of films have had their time now. It's a bit like the superhero movies. I think the bubbles, I would like The Equalizer and John Wick and this particular movie. And
having said that, I would watch The Equalizer 3.
Yeah, The Equalizer 3. Yeah, I mean they're pretty good, but do you know? Yeah, because they're not quite so furious. They're more sedate, I guess.
Yeah,
there is action scenes in them, but it's more ridiculous. Whereas this is like.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they're just real over the top, silly, like, and I don't know how these guys take as much punishment as they do. Do you know what I mean? I've always had this beef about, people falling out of windows and smack their back on a thing, and then they can get up and they're just as good.
Yeah, they can get up.
Obviously, the Tom Cruise,
away.
Jack Reacher movies and stuff like that. It's just they take this punishment, and it just human body. It's like cars; they wouldn't be able to take the punishment. So anyway. So I won't go on a rant of this. I can sum this all up for 2 stars, which is
2 stars.
All it's worth. 2 stars, yeah. Just for Frank Grillo. So because Frank Grillo is good. He's the shining
he's likable, isn't he?
He's just likable, yeah.
You know what you get with Frank Grillo. You know what you get.
You know what you get with Frank Grillo, yeah.
So okay. So the thing is, from what you're saying, right? This sounds like like almost like a trope-filled kind of thing. But and what I was trying to say earlier with Reacher is, like, I feel like Reacher is trope-filled, but it feels like it's on the good end of the trope-filled stuff, and this sounds like it's on the bad end of the trope-filled stuff.
Yeah.
Because
possibly,
because I feel like in Reacher, when people actually take like beatings or anything like that, you see the effect of it. Like, they're not just sort of like jumping up and going on to the next thing or anything like that. Well, even the fact that somebody gets stabbed in the leg and then for the rest of the show walks with a limp, I'm like, oh yeah, that
Oh,
That
perfect,
doesn't happen very
perfect,
often.
perfect. Yeah, you know but do you know what I'm saying with like cars and humans?
Yeah,
They
yeah.
cannot take the punishment they
Yeah.
take in these films.
Yeah, no, and
But they
I know,
can't. Yeah.
I know what you mean because it's kind of like I remember growing up watching films in Nigeria, and I remember growing up and you used to watch for people, people punching each other, you make that
Yeah.
sound, and then when you eventually finally threw a punch, you're like, what the heck? And you throw a
Shake your
punch,
hands,
and
yeah.
you're like, that hurt my hand. How did they
Yeah,
keep
yeah,
doing?
exactly.
It's like that, you're thinking, oh, I must have done it wrong because that guy just kept punching somebody over and over again in the film, and then you watch Rocky,
Yeah,
and
and
then
you would shatter every bone in your hand, wouldn't you, if you were
Yes.
punching someone's face like that repeatedly?
yes, and you're like, okay, punching somebody actually hurts, and I think in the 80s that's what they sold, but nowadays people are getting more savvy, and enough kids like me who punched people in the 80s have grown up and realized it hurts. It hurts when you punch somebody, and those are the ones making films now.
Don't punch people.
So they should know better. They should know
Yeah,
better.
they should know better.
All right, cool. All right, and so quickly before we go, let's go and see if we can just have a quick 5 minutes and talk about Poor Things.
Yes.
So Sean, the headline that Sean had when he reviewed Poor Things last week was Wes Anderson porno movie. And that was the headline that Sean had when he spoke about this last week. And I watched Poor Things earlier this week, and Sean, I see what you say. Because it's kind of like very heightened reality, like Wes Anderson.
Yes.
It's very heightened reality. It's very almost like fairy tale kind of thing, like Wes Anderson. However, because this is Yorgos Lanthimos, I feel like it's dirtier than a Wes Anderson film. And I'm not just talking about the nudity there. I mean, like even the screen, the world doesn't feel as clean or as pristine or as well presented as a Wes Anderson film. But I understand what you're saying about it. With it's a fantasy world. It has elements of our world because it starts off obviously in London, but it isn't really London because they have trams, but the trams in this film are like in the sky and all that kind of stuff. Very early on in the film, you have the Willem Dafoe character, and he sat down at the table, and he has this sort of contraption that he attaches to his stomach because of stuff that happened to him when he was kid, and then he eats, and then he sort of like leans his head back and lets out this sort of like burp, and like a bubble comes out of his mouth and then floats up in the air and then pops. And so it's very, very stylized. There's bits of it that are in black and white. There's bits of it that are in color. I can't figure out which. I don't think that there's any real rhyme or reason to what's in black and white, what's in color. There's bits that are filmed with like a sort of vignette lens where there's just a circle and everything is sort of like distorted. I don't know why those are done in any particular way. And at the end of the film, I was left kind of going, okay, that was all right. That was cool. It was a little bit cruel, but I'm not entirely sure what they're saying. I'm not entirely sure what they're saying, or like, because you can use like this fantasy world as a way of saying something about our world, and I think that there is something being said in there about the way women are viewed. But not being a woman, I'm going to hand over to Holly now to tell you what you thought about the film.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I think the first thing I said was, well, that's completely unhinged. And rather wonderful. And it did feel like it captured the sort of the expectations of women to be a certain way, and the fact that Emma Stone's character didn't have that capacity to appreciate that this was an expectation, so didn't do it.
Yeah.
Did what she thought what she wanted to do. Very much captured the why is, this is, from the most simplistic level, this is, the base position of what I would like to do. Well, not but she
Yes.
would like to do, so she's going to do it.
Yes.
And society stands back in some ways in horror, as is very neatly captured by Mark Ruffalo's character.
By the way, Mark Ruffalo is brilliant in this film.
Superb.
He is
absolutely superb in it.
He is so dumb in this film. He's so perfectly formed. I've never seen him do anything like this before. He's brilliant in this film.
And does sort of personify. He projects onto her what his expectations of her are.
Yeah, Yeah, I think that there's a long discussion you can have about this film. A bit like you're talking about zone of interest, Sean. Like, there's a lot of discussion you can have about this film, about going into what it's saying about women. Like, there is something to say about the fact, because basically it's about a grown woman gets a baby's brain put into her body, and then throughout the film, this baby brain sort of catches up with the body that it's in. And so it's all about what happens, what she goes through. It does this whole thing that I'm not sure about, where it essentially uses sex as this big be-all and end-all, and sex as being this big liberator. And like, essentially, sex plays a big part of this film. She starts, a lot of her development comes through sex in this film. And there is something to be said about the fact that when she is more baby-like and more childlike, that's when a lot of the world and a lot of the men seem to be like, oh yes, and they feel like, and then the more she grows into a woman, and the more that she gets her own brain and she has her own thing, they start finding her unattractive.
They don't like her increased agency.
Yes, exactly. They don't like the fact that she can think for herself and she can do things for herself. But I think that there's a big part of it that because she hasn't had society telling her this is what you're supposed to be like, as her brain was developing, her brain developed too much, so she's like, I don't see why I should be like that. I'm going to be like this. And I think that there's something like that. But then the final scene of the film is just plain weird. It's just plain weird.
It is. It's absolutely bizarre. Wonderful. But completely weird.
Yeah, exactly, Sean. Exactly. I mean, I was like,
I suppose.
What does that have to do with anything?
I think that's probably the enjoyment of it, is it has sort of nothing to do with anything other than a weird neatness to it.
Yeah, no, it just seemed a bit. So I thought it was one of those things where, I think, Sean, you gave it a 3. I think
I think I gave it a strong 3.
A strong 3. I probably would go with a 4. I think
I'm going 5.
Yeah, I think the performance of Emma Stone is definitely a very, very good performance, especially in the early bits, because seeing as I have a toddler and a 4-month-old in my house, there's bits in the performance I'm like, yeah, I've experienced that. Yeah, that's my... And I was thinking, she's done that really well. She's captured something about a 3-year-old right there. And I think her performance is so good that she the way she changes throughout the film feels totally natural. And by the time it gets to the end, I've forgotten that she was like that at the beginning. And I'm like, oh my God, yeah. And it's almost like a magic trick that's been done in front of you and you don't realize how the magic has been gone. So I do think it's a very, very good performance, which is, I think the Best Actress Oscar is a 2-horse race from everything I'm hearing between her and Lily Gladstone from Killers of the Flower Moon. So it's, we'll see what happens. But yeah, so I think that's the feedback. I would give it a 4. Holly would give it a 5. Anyway, we'll say go watch it and make up your own mind, because it's that kind of film. Although I have to say, a lot of people have mentioned about the amount of time Emma Stone spends naked in the film, and that's been like a thing that you can't get away from it. I didn't think it was as much as people were making out. I did not think it was as much as people were making out. Even though I'm not a big fan of nudity in films, I didn't think it was as much as people.
No, I'm relatively indifferent to nudity in films, but I'm also not like a particular. I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah.
Personally, but I didn't think it was. I didn't think the nudity was gratuitous. I thought
it was very matter of fact. It was almost salacious. There's some bits where the nudity is actually, I think, is supposed to be off-putting.
Yeah.
What about the bordello? What about that?
Oh, the French brothel. Yeah, I mean that section, is there, but that section is not a massive part of the film.
No.
It is very odd.
Yeah, it's very odd. Yeah, it's very odd. It made me think of Delicatessen, like I think it was Jean-Pierre Jeunet movie from the 90s. Like it's shot weird, and it's almost kind of like, that's the word, grotesque. That whole sort of bordello brothel sequence is kind of like almost sort of like grotesque, and it sort of revels in the fact that all these people are coming in and all sorts of shapes and sizes and piercings and tattoos and all that, and it's a little bit grotesque. It's a little bit that's the only word I just keep coming back to.
Yeah, I think grotesque is a good word.
Yeah. So, it's almost sort of like celebrating the grotesque thing, and then I'm puncturing that scene every now and then with Mark Ruffalo being an idiot.
He was good. Mark Ruffalo was good.
Mark Ruffalo was brilliant. Mark Ruffalo was he was a sublime idiot in this film. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the all that's left to say, which I forgot to say earlier, is who do you think has won this week? If it isn't already really, really obvious.
Well, I would think I would think Cinema's aced it this week totally.
Cinema has aced this with a 4.33 on average, and TV or streaming and friends can only give us a 2.6. Right?
Whoa, it's a big margin
It's
this
a
week.
big. It's a trouncing. It's an absolute.
But then it is Oscar season, isn't it?
It is. But sometimes Oscar seasons doesn't always produce the goods.
No.
Sometimes
No,
Oscar
true.
seasons, you're like, what the hell are they thinking?
Yeah.
But it's so that's that. So if you would like to get in touch with us, please do find us on Twitter, Netflix via Cinema, on Facebook, Netflix via Cinema, on YouTube, Netflix via Cinema. And there was some stuff that happened on YouTube this week that I was going to talk about, but we've run out of time, so we'll save it for next week. But get in touch, tell us what you think about this, what you think about Oscar seasons, and what you think about any of these films we've spoken about. Until that time, until next week, it's a goodbye from me.
It's a goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Thank you very much for joining us.